I found my name in a place it didn't belong. The ink was clean, the paper was expensive, and the life it described was not mine. It wasn't a mistake. It was a structure. Quiet, careful, built to hold someone else upright. I stood in our hallway with the document in my hands and felt a cold kind of familiarity, like seeing your own face on a stranger's passport. In the next room, he moved calmly, the same footsteps, the same morning rhythm, as if nothing in the house had ever been stolen. We lived a life that looked soft from the outside, not loud wealth, not showy, just smooth. He worked in finance, in the way people say it when they don't want questions. He wore simple watches that still felt heavy. He drove cars that didn't announce themselves. He spoke to people on the phone with careful courtesy. I kept our home quiet. I liked routines. Coffee measured the same way each morning, laundry folded in straight stacks, candles lit only at night. We had been married long enough to settle into each other's silence, long enough that I stopped tracking every detail, long enough to trust the gaps. He never raised his voice, never slammed doors, never gave me bruises I could point to. He gave me something harder to measure, a calmness that felt like certainty, and I mistook it for honesty. In the beginning, he praised my steadiness, how I handled paperwork, how I remembered dates, how I kept records. He said my mind was organized in a way he admired. Sometimes he asked me to sign things. Just to confirm, he would say, lightly. A signature here, initials there, nothing that seemed to carry weight. I didn't think a marriage could be undone by ink. The distance started as something almost polite. A slight delay in his responses, a new habit of stepping outside to take calls, a careful placing of his phone face down on tables. He began to carry a thin leather folder when he left. Not a briefcase, not a statement, just a folder. Quiet enough not to be noticed, consistent enough to become familiar. At first, I told myself it was work. People's lives changed in small ways when they made more money. They learned new precautions, new boundaries, new secrets that were called privacy. But my body noticed. The way you notice a room is colder before you check the thermostat. There were nights he came home and moved through the house like he was counting. Not objects, not rooms, time, minutes, the order of things. He'd kiss my cheek with the same careful pressure, then wash his hands longer than necessary. Not anxious, precise. Sometimes he would ask gentle questions about my past, old addresses, schools, my first job, my mother's maiden name, spoken like a casual curiosity. He had heard these details before. He knew them, but he asked again and again, as if he was checking the spelling of something he planned to use. When mail arrived, he began sorting it first. He never opened my letters, not in front of me. He simply moved them aside, stacked them neatly, and made sure the important ones stayed close to him. I didn't accuse, I didn't press. I adjusted. That's what I had learned to do in this marriage, make space for whatever shape he needed. But the house started to feel like a set, like we were playing a calm scene over and over, and somewhere behind the walls, another story was running. The first clue didn't arrive with drama. It arrived with a clean envelope, thicker than the usual mail, stamped with a firm kind of confidence. It was addressed to me, my full name, correct middle initial, the old version of my signature printed neatly on the corner, as if the sender knew exactly how I wrote myself into the world. I opened it at the kitchen counter, because that's where you open things you assume are ordinary. Bills, notices, statements. The paper inside was crisp. Too crisp. The kind you get when someone expects you to keep it. It was a bank summary, and the account wasn't one I recognized. The numbers were steady, confident, practiced, large enough to change the air around them. Not lottery money, not sudden. This was built, layered, fed over time. My name sat at the top like a crown. Under it, identification details, addresses I had once lived at, employers I had once worked for, a credit history that matched mine, with additions I never made. I stared at the lines the way you stare at a stranger who looks like you. Close enough to confuse someone else, not close enough to belong. There were references to business entities I had never heard of, companies with clean names, neutral, like they were designed to pass through rooms unnoticed. I didn't call the number on the letter. I didn't confront him. I didn't even move from the counter for a long time. I listened to the house. The refrigerator hum, the distant sound of water running, his hands again. Then I did something small, something that felt almost harmless. I opened our file cabinet. The drawer stuck slightly, as if it had been opened too often by someone who didn't want it to look used. Inside were folders labeled in our familiar handwriting: taxes, mortgage, insurance, medical. And at the back, a folder without a label, just a smooth, unmarked spine. I pulled it out. The weight was wrong, thicker than it should have been, full of paper that had never been meant for me to see. I sat down slowly at the table, like sudden movements might make the truth louder. The first page was a copy of my identification, not the one in my wallet, a scanned version, perfectly aligned, edited cleanly. There were forms beneath it: loan applications, business registrations, authorizations. Everywhere my name appeared, there was a signature that looked like mine, but not written by my hand. It wasn't sloppy. It wasn't rushed. It was studied, practiced. A forgery with patience. The dates ran back years. Not weeks, not months. Years. I turned page after page and felt the timeline settle into place with quiet cruelty. Around the same time we upgraded our furniture, my name had opened a new line of credit. When we took our first comfortable vacation, my identity had been used as collateral. When he started bringing home smoother groceries, my profile had carried risk I never agreed to carry. The fortune wasn't new. It was disguised. It had been routed through structures that needed a clean identity, one with no visible stains, no loud history, no obvious red flags. Mine. There were letters from financial institutions, some congratulatory, some firm. A few had the cold language of concern, requests for confirmation, requests for documentation, requests for answers to questions I had never been asked. And then, the quietest, sharpest page. A legal notice referencing misrepresentation, and my name printed in the position of responsibility. I read it twice, slowly. Not because it was complicated, because my mind was trying to negotiate with the shape of it. He had not built his success beside me. He had built it inside me, using my details as scaffolding, wearing my identity like gloves. The pattern became clear. When paperwork needed a signature, it carried my name. When risk needed a person, it found me. When profit arrived, it belonged to him. It wasn't only theft, it was design. And the most devastating part was how calm it all looked. No messy panic, no desperate scribbles, just a clean system of exploitation, organized in straight lines, filed neatly in our home. I thought about all the times he had praised my steadiness, my order, my reliability. He hadn't admired it. He had selected it. That night, I moved through the house quietly. I made dinner the same way. I cleaned the same counters. I folded the same towels. Not because everything was normal, but because I needed to see how much of my life was still mine. He sat across from me with gentle eyes. He asked about my day. He nodded at the right moments. His calmness didn't crack. I watched him breathe, watched the ease in his shoulders, the comfort of a man standing on someone else's foundation. I realized something painful and simple. Trust, for him, was not a promise. It was a resource, something to be extracted carefully, the way he extracted everything else. In the bathroom mirror later, I looked at my own face. It was familiar. It was mine. And yet I felt strangely divided, as if there were two versions of me walking around in the world. One who lived in this house, one whose name had been dragged through accounts and documents, standing silently in places I had never been. I didn't feel rage the way movies teach people to feel rage. I felt quiet disorientation, a slow, cold recalibration. How do you grieve a betrayal that has been happening for years, in a drawer you walked past every day? I thought about my signature, how personal it had always felt. A small mark that said, "This is me. I agree. I was here." Now it looked like something anyone could learn if they watched long enough. I understood that what he took wasn't only credit. He took my clean history, my reputation, my future stability. He traded my safety for his comfort, and he did it with the patience of someone who believed he deserved it. I let the realization sit, not as a performance, not as a scene, just as truth. Heavy, undeniable, quietly reshaping everything I thought I was living. In the morning, I made coffee and didn't offer him any. I gathered the folder and placed it in my bag, not dramatically, not trembling, like someone finally picking up what belonged to her. I walked out of the house with slow steps and felt the air outside meet my skin like an honest thing. I didn't leave a note. I didn't announce. I didn't try to force emotion into words that couldn't carry it. At the bank, I asked for a private room. I slid the papers across the table. I watched their eyes change as they read. They spoke carefully after that. They asked questions in a softer tone. They used the word investigation. They used the word fraud. And for the first time in a long time, the consequences moved toward the person who had earned them. Later, I sat in my car with my hands on the steering wheel and let the silence do what it needed to do. I didn't cry for the marriage. I didn't mourn the man I thought he was. I mourned the version of myself who signed without reading, who trusted without checking, who believed love made a person safe. When I finally drove away, I didn't feel victorious. I felt clear. I let him keep the money he built, because I was taking back the one thing he couldn't replace: my name.